All that glitters is still gold. Notre Dame makes it back-to-back national titles.
The Bandits are back-to-back NLL champions!
This past year, a lot changed in the sport of lacrosse. We saw the PLL implement home cities for each team, generational talents like Brendan O'Neill and Connor Schellenberger take the field in their pro debuts. It truly was a year for the history books, and today I wanted to take a look back at all of it. How are you doing? My name is Ben, and today we're going to take a look at how lacrosse changed in 2024. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who have been watching, liking, and subscribing to my channel. I took a little bit of time away, and you guys still consistently came out, left comments, liked, and engaged on my videos, so thank you so much. I just wanted to put that out there, and let's get this channel up to 1,000 subscribers. January 2024. The NLL season has been underway for about a month now, and the biggest change implemented in the offseason was the NLL abandoned the East and West conferences, putting everybody into what I like to call the big blob of teams. With all jokes aside, this worked well as to put the best teams in the playoffs consistently, and a little bit later in the video you'll see why this worked out well for the NLL. Additionally, the NLL would launch their Unbox series, trying to reach out to untapped lacrosse communities across North America. But the biggest highlight to the Unbox series is the NLL exposing 22 different markets to the sport and trying to grow it by sampling seeds all around the US and Canada to get more people interested in the sport. The first NLL Unbox game would be played in Laval, Quebec, which is just outside of Montreal, between the Toronto Rock and the New York Riptide. This game would be a big success, and I can see this project going very far in the near future. Speaking of the New York Riptide though, just 6 days after this game, it was announced they would be relocating to Ottawa at the conclusion of the 2024 season. They would be rebranded as the Ottawa Black Bears and cited poor attendance and disputes over their current venue as the main reasons for the relocation. The New York Riptide would end up missing the playoffs, ending their time in New York on a pretty bitter note. With no conferences, the NLL would have all 15 teams competing for 8 total playoff spots. 6 teams from the previous Eastern Conference would make it in, meaning that only 2 from the defunct Western Conference would make the playoffs. This is the prime example I alluded to earlier, showing why the league moved away from the conference system. It guarantees good lacrosse is going to be played and that the best teams will actually make it to the playoffs. My very own Colorado Mammoths would win the Toilet Award with the worst record in the league of 5-13. And truthfully, this is kinda how I saw the season going after I watched the first 4 games of the Mammoths this year. Though this doesn't negate the fact that just 1 year prior, they were the NLL Championship, and the year before that, they were NLL champions. For the playoffs though, Buffalo would take home their second championship in 2 years, completing the rare back-to-back title defense. They would defeat the Georgia Swarm in the first round, and then sweep Toronto and Albany in the series en route to this championship. And honestly, who knows? With Buffalo's strong start to the year, they may just cement themselves as one of lacrosse's best dynasties in history. I remember watching the first game for DU in the 2024 season. It was against Johns Hopkins and it was the first game for Coach Matt Brown, so I was pretty excited to see what they were going to do. In the final seconds, the Pioneers would score 2 quick goals to force OT. DU would win it with this beauty of a goal in overtime, and I remember just being ecstatic, like jumping in the air for joy that we had just beat Johns Hopkins. Like, I swear, there's nothing better than good college lacrosse. It's just an amazing feeling, and when your team's doing well, you're on top of a mountain. The competition level really is that high. From week to week, you just don't know who's going to be hitting their strength, and it makes it that much more unpredictable. And for my Pioneers, it was very similar. They started out the season very strong, but then they faced that tough competition that was kind of unexpected later on. But there was one team throughout the year that did not slow down, and I'm sure if you guys watched college lacrosse this year, you know exactly who I'm talking about. The theme for this year in college lacrosse was really, holy shit, Notre Dame just might repeat. They would go 12-1 in the regular season, only falling to Georgetown in overtime, but then afterwards they would just continue to be just as dominant. And what I mean by this is after their overtime loss to Georgetown, they would win 14 straight games en route to their second title in 2 years. They would even get their revenge against Georgetown, winning 16-11 and then steamrolling their way through the Final Four, defeating DU 13-6 and blowing out Maryland in the championship game 15-5. Chris Kavanaugh would lead the charge with 8 goals between both Final Four games. This dominant run would include a Tewaaraton win for Pat Kavanaugh, along with 2 first-round selections and back-to-back picks for the Irish. Back-to-back picks, there's some similarities there. These would be Liam Entenmann and Pat Kavanaugh, who would go 5th and 6th overall respectively. Of course, I wouldn't forget women's lacrosse for the 2024 season, because it was just as eventful as the men's league was. Northwestern and Boston College would continue their rivalry, meeting up in the championship game where Boston College would get their revenge for the year prior, knocking off Northwestern. This would be Boston College's 2nd title in just 4 years, though it wouldn't be all doom and gloom for Northwestern, as Izzy Skane would win her 2nd Tewaaraton in just 2 years, completing the back-to-back run. I think I'm starting to see a trend with this year, but stick with me as the video goes along. In November of 2023, the PLL announced it would be assigning home cities to each team. This also came with the news that the Chrome Lacrosse Club would be rebranded as the Denver Outlaws, finally bringing back my favorite and one of the most accomplished MLL teams of all time. The newly formed Denver Outlaws would select Brennan O'Neill with the 1st overall pick, a truly generational talent, but there were some other one-of-kind talents taken after him, names like Connor Schellenberger, Liam Entenmann, gotta give goalies some love, and of course Pat Kavanaugh. In the first few weeks of the regular season, the New York Atlas would start the season super hot, scoring 54 goals in their first 3 games, absolutely dominating their opponents, including the Denver Outlaws. One of the most memorable games of the entire season came in week 2 as the Denver Outlaws were seeking their first win since being recreated as a franchise, and they faced off against the Utah Archers. The defending champion Utah Archers. Brennan O'Neill would take over this game with 7 total points in the comeback victory in overtime, including this overtime goal from him. This game was awesome to watch live on TV, and I was so close to turning it off as they were down by a ton going into the 4th quarter. As I mentioned earlier with the Johns Hopkins versus DU game, this one felt the same way in terms of the excitement I had after the victory. I would love to hear the stories you guys have of your favorite teams and the best games from this year, so if you have those, drop them in the comments below. I do read all the comments and I would really appreciate to hear what you guys have to say on this. I would actually be at the Denver Outlaws homecoming game in August here in Colorado, but there wasn't enough for me to really talk about and footage to show, so I thought I would just throw it in here as opposed to its own standalone video. And a huge shout out goes to my awesome girlfriend Belle for attending the games with me and putting up with my crazy lacrosse fandom self. The high point was definitely being in that stadium with everyone who was just so excited to have the Denver Outlaws back as well and seeing their first game back. I do want to bring up the worst side of the weekend, which was seeing kids get screamed at, cursed at by toxic parents over them sitting in seats that they already had reserved. I saw multiple of these cases over the confusion with seating, and the family in front of us actually had their kids screamed at and cursed at by a parent as well. But Belle and I ended up going and getting him some Denver Outlaws wristbands and other merch to make the day better, and then we headed out after that sour taste in our mouths. But putting aside my little review of the PLL homecoming weekend, let's get back into the regular season for the PLL. Out of the 8 teams in the PLL, the Water Dogs and Redwoods would miss the playoffs. To me, the most shocking of these is the Water Dogs missing the playoffs, as they were in the championship just a year prior and have a stacked roster. A lot of their losses would come within just 1 or 2 goals, which I know is especially cutting to Water Dogs fans out there. But watch out in 2025, as I believe they're due for a bounce back and possibly another championship run. Jeff Teat would end up taking home his first MVP in the league, and it was really well deserved. The entire year he dominated the PLL. He led the league in points, goals, and assists. He truly was a force to be reckoned with. For the first round, the Whipsnakes would defeat the Outlaws 11-10, and the Chaos would beat the Cannons 8-4. Though in the second round, the number 1 seed Atlas would fall to the Whipsnakes in OT. Truly a shocker for a team that had dominated the regular season. On the other side, there was another shocking outcome, as the Archers would defeat the Chaos 10-1. The Chaos wouldn't score until the 4th quarter. That's just how dominant the Archers were in this game. This clearly had an impact, as the Chaos's head coach and GM Andy Towers would step down after the season, which was definitely a bit of a surprise for most of the lacrosse world. The championship was set, Whipsnakes versus Archers, and the Archers would pull ahead and complete the back-to-back title defense with a 12-8 victory. This is kind of what I had been alluding to this entire video, as this year in lacrosse was the year of back-to-backs. The NLL, NCAA men's, and PLL would all have back-to-back champions this year, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like, what are the chances that that actually happens? Like, 1 in a zillion. It's wild. Only time will tell that 2025 is the year of three-peats, but I have a strong hunch that that won't be the case, even though it would be cool to see at least one of these teams to get the three-peat. But that is all I have for you fine folks. Thank you for reaching the end of the video. Thank you for being here, and I would encourage you to like and subscribe as I have a lot of great new content coming out soon. Your support means the world to me, and I've already got to do some really cool stuff and meet some amazing people because of the views, likes, and subs you all give me. I love you all very dearly, and I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.